Hello and welcome to our video tutorial series on how to make the 70/20 Hinterland Pullover, hoodie-like blouse made from woven fabrics. Let's start with the hood. First, it is essential to mark all the seam numbers on your pieces as well, as they give you the indication which sides to sew together and what points will meet each other. Sew the hood center back part to the side hood pieces from seam number 1 to seam number 3. Make sure that you do not sew together the seam allowances at the beginning and end, but really stop at the seam number points, which are shown in the video here. On the side pieces, clip diagonally up to the seam at seam number 1. Then sew the flat-felled seam on each side. For this, you first cut one of the two seam allowances to about 5 millimeters width. Iron both seam allowances to the other side so that the wider one lays on top. Fold over the seam allowance that lays on top, while enclosing the lower one and top stitch close to the edge. Again, make sure not to include the seam allowances at the end. Iron everything. For the hood, it becomes handy to use a rounded ironing helper called tailor's hem. You can see that the seam allowances at seam number 1 are still loose and not sewn. Continue the same procedure on the other side with the second side hood piece. Now sew the upper hood seam. To avoid the difficulty of a flat-felled seam here, press the seam allowances open and fold them under narrowly. Top stitch. Now take your front yoke pieces, which will be attached to the hood. Pay attention to seam numbers 2 and 4. Again, so this is a flat-felled seam. Now take your back yoke piece. Align your shoulder line of the yoke piece to your front yokes and making sure that seam numbers 1 align. You might want to ease your back yoke shoulder line by ironing while subtly pulling the piece. Iron and work a flat felled seam. Always sew only up to the match point, even though this is a little trickier because of the flat felled seams. Continue on the other side in the same way. Sew the back edge of the hood to the neckline. Lay the hood's seam allowance over the neckline, fold it under and sew it by hand to the neckline of the back yoke. We recommend first basting this line and then sewing it by hand. Again, please note the 2 points that we are only sewing from or up to. To give the corner at seam number 1 the necessary freedom of movement, lay it flat as shown in the video and only then top stitch.